things change this for you. Yeah. You stay in the shower and you look yes, like how you do that. Yeah, but it didn't help. Oh, yeah. So you're good. That's what I tell them. They're like, no, yeah. He's ready. He's ready. No. 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 Yes. Ready.
We'd ask the sheriffs to sit down and, in fact, Captain, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely.
And come on up here and lead us from up here. Would you do that?
Absolutely, I'll do that.
All right.
I can have everybody please stand, put your right hand over your heart. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you so much.
Some of us attended a couple of days ago the sheriff's annual award ceremonies in the hotel in Anaheim at the Hilton. It was marvelous. There were 1,000 people there, and we sat with the captain at his table and participated in an event that highlighted why the sheriffs are so important to this, particularly South County, because that's where most of them operate. And the thing I think that impressed me the most were two things. One, the number of incidents where sheriffs rescue people and save lives. You always think of the fire authority for that, but there were probably 7 or 8, weren't there, instances where sheriffs went into burning buildings, in the cars that were on fire, or in other situations, and literally saved human lives. And the other thing I think were the number of female sheriffs. That really impressed me. And they were, when I see Catherine walking around with a gun on her hip and in uniform, that's quite an achievement to have the female to distaff side that are protecting us. And so thank you for sitting at our table for us sitting at your table and for a wonderful. Carol, what was your impression?
I'm just going to jump in here for a second. This is a special meeting, so we're a little more constrained on the agenda than we usually are.
Sinning again?
This is a special meeting, so we're a little more constrained on the agenda than we usually are. So I would suggest moving on to the roll call, and then you can make broader comments on Medal of Valor at your next regular meeting.
Job, as you know, we've talked about this, is to correct me.
To
and
rain on
any
the
other
parade,
mayor that
yes.
sits here. Okay, let's take a roll as we open the meeting.
All right.
Julie?
is present.
Present. I thought you said Horn. I'm sorry.
Mayor Pro Tem Horn.
Here.
And Mayor Hatch.
All right, what do we do now? Can I ask
Presentations and
Annie
ceremonial
to make a
matters.
comment and Carol to make her comment?
No.
Not
You
now.
said to wait until next meeting. You want to do that? Put it down?
I will have forgotten it by the next meeting, but that's fine. We
I'll
will do it.
remember.
We will add it to the agenda.
I'm sure the state of California will indulge us. We're a small city, as you know. All right. We have a presentation, item number 4 on the agenda, which is of great import to the city of Laguna Woods and the village of Laguna Woods, particularly the village. And we look forward to that report. It is a presentation regarding coyote activity and awareness in Laguna Beach and Laguna Woods Animal Services, and we have representatives for us. Would you introduce yourself and share your thoughts?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Jim Barris, Civilian Services Administrator with the City of Laguna Beach Police Department and Animal Services Division. Thank you for affording me the opportunity to come and speak with you all this afternoon about one of our favorite topics, coyotes and living with wildlife. I'm joined today by my colleague, Animal Services Officer John Thompson. So we'll present some updated data to you and briefly explain some of the measures that we take on a daily basis to address the matter of coyotes. So just kind of a broad overview, since the beginning of the year, we've had a recent uptick in reports of coyote sightings. We had 3 calls in January, 3 in February, 7 in March, and 10 year-to-date in April. So you see the line there kind of going up. So those who may believe or are reporting that they're seeing more coyotes out there, that is true. And it's the spring, it's that time of the year where they're getting active. This is actually normal. They, go up and they go down, through the course of the year as they get into mating season, and then they have their pups and they rear them. So we're in the spring season. This is the time that you would see more, and the statistics reflect that. So that's not anything of really concern per se. It is actually normal behavior. But it is something for residents to be aware of, because if they're more out there, then yes, that's more opportunities to have potentially a negative encounter with a coyote if you're walking by yourself or you have your dog off leash or unattended. So we strongly encourage residents to be careful and to be aware, that the coyotes are out there. And Laguna Woods, as we've discussed in the past, is a perfect place for coyotes. It's a gated community for the most part, surrounded by wilderness areas. You have the trails and the walking paths that, go throughout the town. You have the golf courses, and the rabbits and all the other little critters that they like to eat. So the coyotes like to live in Laguna Woods as much as the residents do. So it's just something to be aware of. We have had a few incidents of concern recently. We had a resident a couple of weeks ago that was knocked down by a coyote attempting to get his dogs, and scraped his knee. Nothing super serious, but still a very scary incident for him and his wife, unfortunately. So incidents do occasionally happen. That's why we have an ongoing effort to provide education to especially new residents that are coming in, to make them aware that, yes, even in a city, you've got coyotes walking around, and here are some of the measures that you can take to protect yourself and your pets. So I'm going to ask my colleague John to come on up and just demonstrate with you. We have a little toy that we want to share with the council and the community. It's part of our what we call hazing efforts. So 2 reasons why coyotes will be more aggressive is they learn that people are feeding them, either directly or indirectly, through people literally leaving food out for them, or indirectly by not cleaning up their pet food or fruit that drops. So the coyotes are omnivores; they'll eat anything, and so they learn that people are a source of food, and that's what draws them in the first place. The other thing that can create coyote problems is that they begin to get too comfortable with people. They lose their fear of people, and that's because people aren't hazing them. So maybe they're walking along and you see a coyote and you don't do anything. You don't yell at it, you don't throw a rock at it. And over time it learns, oh, people are friendly. I have nothing to fear, and that's bad. We don't want coyotes to lose their fear of people. We want them to see people as something to be afraid of. So one of the ways we can do that is to encourage people to haze coyotes. And that's part of our community education where we try to teach residents safe methods to do just that. But I want to make sure that the community is well aware that we do it too. So one of the measures that our animal control officers come in, John's going to show you, this is one of our paintball guns. So we use these little pellets here, and I'll let that. Take a look at it.
Chris, he's not in the picture.
So those have water in them.
You come this way a little bit.
Sorry,
he's-
we were just
yeah.
wanted to make sure you wrote the picture for the audience at home.
So they go around and we use the data that we've gotten from residents on coyote sightings to focus our hazing efforts in the correct place. And we fire those little paintball pellets, but it's not paint in there, it's water. So it's a humane method. It's intended to inflict some pain on the coyote, but in a humane manner. It does not injure them. It certainly stings, it hurts, that's what the intent is, okay? It's to make the coyote afraid of people, but not to injure it. So this is something that humane organizations are comfortable with. It's a humane hazing technique. And it's environmentally friendly too, because those don't have any kind of chemicals in it. It's just, again, plain water. So we'll go through and we fire those, and the intent is that after the coyote gets hit with these, it no longer perceives people as something to be around. Instead they'll be afraid of us, which is good for them too, by the way. We don't want negative encounters. And another little tool we're going to be getting shortly, this is the rifle version that they have. So we're going to be getting a pistol version that the ASOs can carry right on their pant leg. So if they're walking around talking to a resident for some other reason not related to coyotes, and one just comes out of the bushes or something like that, they don't often have time to run to the trucking to get that. So they'll have the little pepper ball pistol right on their pant, and they could pull that out, and then they could shoot the coyote right there with the same water-based pellet that you saw there. So just, kind of an ongoing effort. It's an effective technique that other agencies have used too, so we're deploying it now in Laguna Woods, just to keep those coyotes wild. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
What about a super soaker? Do they ever get that close?
They don't really get that close to us where a super soaker would be effective, and I don't know. We don't encourage residents to use a hose either. There's really no evidence or data to suggest that would be an effective hazing technique. Much better to throw a solid object at them, like a rock, a pebble, or something like that.
Our landscapers are really good. There's very few rocks to pick up and throw, because I have been in that situation.
Annie, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I had a question. You said one of the issues that we're having is that the coyotes have sort of lost their fear of people. And so a couple of things that I'm thinking about is like making noises. So what can our community do in terms of building back up that fear of people, or what are some of the suggestions?
It's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So the number one thing that you can do to prevent coyotes from losing their fear of people is don't feed them. That's the usual route to them becoming habituated. The second thing you can do is if you're walking around, say you're on a walk one night or any time of the day, and if a coyote comes near you, don't ignore it. Even if you're just by yourself and you don't have a dog, yell at it, scream at it, throw something at it. Be aggressive yourself to the greatest degree you feel comfortable and safe doing so. So that way the coyote doesn't begin to adapt or learn that it's got nothing to fear from people. Some effective hazing techniques you can do is, I've mentioned several times, throwing something at it. You can get a Coke can with, put some, pennies in there, a little rattling device. You can carry a club. If it gets that close to you where you could hit it, if need be. Hopefully, it wouldn't get that close to begin with. Walking in teams, is going to prevent coyote encounters or reduce the probability of it. If you're a single person walking around, the odds are a little higher that, it may, contact you. You can carry an air horn, or a noisemaker, that will scare them off, as well. A little less enthusiastic on bear spray. Some people have said, that. We don't have a whole lot of evidence that that's necessarily been effective. Usually it's solid objects like a rock or, a can or noisemakers, seem to be the most effective options. John, do you have any thoughts on that?
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, John Thompson, Laguna Beach Animal Services. Yeah, basically, just as Supervisor Barris stated that a lot of our hazing stuff, we like to start early. That way we're basically trying to scare off the animal early with the yelling, with the standing as tall as possible, waving your hands and things like that. As long as we can keep the animals moving early on, then we don't have to escalate to basically throwing the objects and possibly using the paintball. And then obviously last resort is trapping, and that is basically our extreme last resort, and we don't want to do that unless we really have to. But we have been I've been working in the city for about 23 years now since we took over the contract. And through my experience and things like that, there have been at certain times of the season when they do become a little bit more active. And as long as the residents call us, let us know where the activity is happening, then we can act on it. A lot of times what will happen is when residents do call us, the activity has already been going on for a week, a month, several months, and that coyote is already what we call habituated and basically being comfortable in certain areas. That's when we start seeing them sleeping underneath trees, making dens in bushes and things like that. So our main focus is for the residents to call us as soon as possible, let us know what's going on. And then if we have a certain area which we see which is heating up a little bit or increasing with activity, then we can act on it before things get out of control.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Sherry?
Many of the residents, to protect their pets, have little dog halters with spikes coming out.
Yes.
Do you think those are effective?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not 100% effective, but they're better than nothing. So little vest with the little spikes, that cover the neck area, that's helpful. So yes, that's something, that's an easy solution that you can implement.
Okay, thank you. A lot of little poodle bikers
I
around.
did.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a comment about bird feeders, which I believe are not allowed in the village because the seed from the feeder spills down onto the ground below, and that attracts rats and bunnies, and that attracts coyotes.
Yep, and the coyotes will actually eat the seed themselves too, believe it or not. But yeah, the little critters that they attract the coyotes.
What is their diet?
Pardon me, sir?
What is their diet in the village?
They'll eat it, they're omnivores. Coyotes will eat trash, they'll eat fruit, they'll eat other little animals. They're very opportunistic feeders. So they'll eat practically anything.
What about the areas that we know that they travel regularly? We have a very large green area behind ours. I mean, extends a long block, and it's as wide as this room here.
Yep.
And I see them going there all the time, running along, and then they disappear. Now, do you watch out and watch over certain areas when you see them, or do you wait to hear that they're using it?
We do. We have a little pin map on the wall. So as we get reports of sightings from residents that either call or send it via email, we put little pins, little trackers, and as you stated, the more obvious or the places where we get most of the sightings do correlate with the trails and the open space areas, and the golf course and all of that. No surprise. So that is where our animal control officers do try to focus their proactive hazing efforts, in addition to areas where we have a specific problem. So if we get a report of an attack or an attempted attack in a specific, village, obviously we'll go there in that neighborhood and walk around and alert the residents. But generally, we're walking the same trails that the coyotes do.
Do you ever find where they spend the night or where their den is or whatever? And then how do you find that and how do you correct that? Do you keep them moving about and
That's a good question. Yes, we do sometimes, not all the time. We'll be alerted by landscaping services, that will let us know where there's a den, and we'll go and we'll do some what we call den disruption to move them along. Sometimes landscaping handles it on their own, but sometimes we don't know where the den is either, and it's difficult to find out because there's no tracker we use. They don't have any, they're not like the mountain lions that have trackers. So we kind of have to figure it out on our own sometimes based on, you triangulate based on the complaints and where you see them to figure it out.
So this is a never-ending story, really, isn't it?
Never ending. That is true.
Okay.
Yes.
How many do we got out there? Do you have any idea?
That's difficult to say because they are wild animals and there's so much wilderness area that's out and about. I don't really want to put a number on it because that might be misleading. What I would say is that there's no more or no less coyotes than at any other time, if you were to look at prior years. Some people think there are because they see them more during certain times of the season as they mate or raise their pups. But the population overall, there's nothing really to indicate that the population is,
Increasing.
abnormally large.
Yeah. So outside our walls, they're out there too, aren't they? Or are
They're
they all
everywhere,
in
Mr.
here?
Mayor. Yeah, they go to Anaheim. They caught one at the Disneyland Hotel. They're in Santa Ana, they're in Los Angeles. There are more coyotes that live in cities per square mile than out in the wilderness areas. And that's because there's a greater food source in the cities.
Oh.
So, and a lot of them have adapted to the human population. People equal food. Versus out in the wilderness areas, they have to deal with mountain lions and bears and, and all those other competitors. So you will find coyotes in all of the cities. It's not unique to Laguna Woods. They're all over Southern California.
When we encounter one, can we use your names as reference?
Sure.
Does that work at all? Do they fear you too?
I don't know how successful that will be, but you're welcome to throw our names out.
Okay. Thanks so much,
Thank you.
really. We really appreciate it.
I did have a
Oh,
quick
Carol,
comment.
I'm
That's all right.
sorry.
I did want to say two things. That one, we appreciate your knowledge. We are not animal experts, and you are the animal experts. We turn to you and depend on your expertise. The second one is the two things that I think I'm going away with, and that is one, no food out there, even though you aren't purposely feeding the coyote, remove your pet food so the coyote doesn't have access to that. And the other thing, please, I'm asking people at home, please report. If you don't report, then you don't have it on your, you don't know. And I think Officer Thompson told me that it escalates, and if you haven't had the reports, then you don't know that it was worse. So every person that reports actually helps everybody else, particularly when we did have a very serious reporting recently. So thank you, and I'm encouraging people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I believe that's the only matter we have under item 4 on the agenda. We'll receive and file that report again with our great thanks to you. We now come to item 5, public comments on non-agenda items. We have one public comment that I'm aware of. Yoli?
And I'll just mention that we do have one written public comment. If the council would like, we can read it. It's certainly been provided to council and is a part of the record.
That's what Yoli's going to do right now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Lauren Lutzenheiser, 521 Kaya Aragon. I'm a retired University Planning School faculty member with over 30-plus years' experience in research and action on energy, climate, technology, and policy. I would like to strongly encourage the council to consider the impacts of climate change on city residents and to begin exploring ways that the city can help provide accurate information and other forms of support as residents grapple with personal vulnerabilities and responses to extreme weather events, longer bouts of heat and cold, indoor air quality questions, inefficient household heating and cooling technologies, and all accompanied by continuously increasing energy costs. The walls and gates of the village are comforting, but they can also hide energy poverty and climate risk. Many cities are now pursuing climate action plans and strategies. In fact, the City of Laguna Woods has an excellent start in the energy and climate goals of the city's general plan conservation element. And while city government is uniquely positioned to take the lead in engaging residents and other stakeholders in local climate action, you do not have to do this alone or at great expense. There are amazing skills and knowledge among the residents waiting to be tapped, as well as unique capacities in the mutuals and VMS, potential partners in UC Irvine faculty and students, nonprofit groups across the state, and innovative technology firms located in and around Irvine. I hope you can get climate action on your agenda in the not-too-distant future. If you do not, it's unfortunately quite possible that no one else can or will. Thank you.
Well, we thank Lauren for that very provocative letter, and certainly we will take to heart the things she has written. Does anyone wish to make a comment on the letter? Carol?
No, I appreciate her interest too. Yeah, he or she, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cynthia, anything?
Well, I'm glad that we have taken some steps to begin our climate action plan, and perhaps we can incorporate Lauren into further discussions. So I'm looking at that.
Sherry?
Lauren is quite knowledgeable and has like a 30-year experiences, yeah, whatever he is. But he's been with cities and climate and doing all this work for a long time and is volunteering to lend his expertise. So when we do something about it, which I would love to, we were the first city to have a climate adaptation plan, and it's always good to be thinking about our climate. So maybe he could be instrumental in helping.
Thank you. That's a good thought. Annie?
I'll just add on to what everyone else has said. I think it's really good that we have residents that are concerned about climate change, and certainly Lauren has done some research, and so I just look forward to whatever the city can do to further this along.
Thank you. I think this board has a fascinating ability to recognize and then act upon suggestions that are made to it. Item number, no other public comments then that we've received? That's the only one.
None online.
Are there any in the public that wish to speak, the two of you, on non-agenda items? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6. The city treasurer's report, this monthly report that is given to us, has been extremely valuable, and we will await the next report in our next meeting. We now come to the consent calendar. These are items which are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote unless a member of the council wishes to withdraw one for direct discussion, or unless there is a member of the public that wishes to withdraw one. Do I hear anyone in the public that wishes to withdraw one of these items? Hearing none. In the council, anyone wish to withdraw one? Do I have a motion?
I'll move the consent calendar.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, let's...
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Approved. We now go to the first action item. Excuse me while I turn a page. All right, public hearings. We have none. That's item number 8. We'll now move to item number 9, City Council business. This is a very interesting One, I'm sure we've all read through this and have some questions for our city manager, so let us turn 9.1 Local California Environmental Quality Act guidelines over to our city manager for leading out on this discussion and presentation. Chris?
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask the city clerk, could you turn off one of the lights in front of the screen so it's a little easier to read? We are here to talk to you about local California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. For the purpose of this discussion, California Environmental Quality Act is probably most often going to be referred to as CEQA. This is state law that governs how we assess the environmental impact of development applications and other sorts of often land disturbing projects. State law requires that public agencies implement CEQA, and that in doing so, they adopt objectives, criteria, and procedures specific to their jurisdiction. Those are sometimes called local CEQA procedures, but are most often referred to as local CEQA guidelines. State law requires that each agency's local CEQA guidelines be prepared consistent with various provisions of state law, most notably the California Public Resources Code, and also the state's own CEQA guidelines, referred to as state CEQA guidelines. Our existing local CEQA guidelines were first adopted in 2008. They were subsequently amended in 2009. At the time, they were referred to as local CEQA procedures. You'll note in today's agenda that we're proposing to revert to the more common naming convention of local CEQA guidelines. Updating these CEQA guidelines is something that is a part of your current budget and work plan. We've listed it as a significant work plan item. I want to walk through some of what I view as the more significant modifications to the ordinance or to the guidelines. We've included the existing guidelines and then the proposed guidelines in your agenda packet as well. A lot of what we've done is tried to amend the language for consistency with state law. As you can undoubtedly imagine, state law has changed pretty significantly since 2009, so there's quite a bit of modification proposed seeking to simply square with state law. In 2009, the city added language specific to global climate change. If you had a chance to review the existing CEQA guidelines, there's a whole section related to climate change. That was at the time in response to then recent changes in state law that related to climate change in advance of the state providing really specific guidelines on how to evaluate climate change in the context of a CEQA evaluation. We are proposing removing that language that was added in 2009 due to the state subsequent to that releasing a significant amount of guidance and also changes in state law that really render that language unnecessary. I would view it as more like placeholder language to refer to then recently adopted legislation than it is relevant to today's analysis. I will say, as I did in the agenda report, that climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, air quality, there are all sorts of things that are really critical tenets of CEQA. So even though we're proposing removing that language, it does nothing to change the fact that climate change is something the city's required to look into as part of CEQA evaluations. One of the things that's relatively unique in the city's local CEQA guidelines, you have an elective 1,000-foot direct mail public noticing requirement for certain types of environmental documents. State law generally requires a 300-foot radius for certain types of notifications. The city in 2008 elected to extend that to 1,000 feet. We are proposing to retain the 1,000-foot direct mail requirement with a couple of modifications. Probably the most significant and I think beneficial for residents of Laguna Woods is changing that from simply a property owner of record notification to both property owners and occupants of property. That will, I think, better serve what I imagine the intent was back in 2008 to notify people who are living in the area of development projects of what's actually transpiring. With that, there's a likelihood that there will be, for certain types of development projects, really significant numbers of public notices that would be required to direct the mail. We've included language in the proposed CEQA guidelines that would allow for an additional newspaper publication to be substituted when the number of notices to be mailed exceed either 500 for a negative declaration, 750 for a mitigated negative declaration, or 1,000 for an environmental impact report. This is to say that all of the notification requirements already in state law would continue to apply, but the city's own 1,000-foot noticing requirement, that could be substituted with that additional newspaper notification when we get to those really large numbers of individual mailers. There's also language in the city's existing public noticing requirements that I think could be interpreted as allowing staff to unilaterally modify some of those public noticing requirements. That candidly is not discretion that staff would like to have. We would look to the council to adopt public noticing requirements that make sense for this jurisdiction, and then staff's job would be to make sure that those transpire. So we're proposing to remove that language that would give staff discretion otherwise. And then finally, there's a requirement in the existing CEQA guidelines that requires draft environmental impact reports to be made available at the Laguna Woods Village Library. As we noted in your agenda packet, we don't have any control over the Laguna Woods Village Library. And so it is a little awkward to have a requirement that relies on an unaffiliated third party that doesn't have a legal obligation to make those available as a part of our required CEQA noticing. So what I believe happened in 2008, I think it was an attempt on the part of the city to make a copy of draft environmental impact reports at a local library in the vicinity of the city. At that time, obviously, the library was co-located with City Hall. There is state law that says that draft environmental impact reports should be provided to local public libraries in the vicinity of the project site. And so that would happen. We would provide draft environmental impact reports to OC public libraries, and I believe their standard practice is to make them available in the branch libraries that serve the area of the project. But we would propose to do that in lieu of making them available at the village library, not because we have any concern with doing that, other than if they said no, we've got an awkward situation where our guidelines require us to do something that we don't have any ability to actually make happen. There are other changes, obviously, in the document, but I do think that most of them can be characterized as changes related to public noticing and changes intended to bring the guidelines from compliance with 2009 state law to 2024 state law. Our recommendation today is that the council adopt a resolution titled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending local California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, procedures, adopted pursuant to California Public Resources Code Section 21082, and determining and certifying that the amended local California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, procedures, are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, there's an opportunity for any public comments, and then I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. We'll now open to public comments. Have we received anything in the mail from this, Yoli?
We have not.
No. Any in the public that would like to comment upon this resolution? Hearing none then. Yes. Can you come on up here? Thank you.
Catherine Freshley. I had not anticipated commenting, but I'm a little concerned removing the opportunity, particularly when it comes to this document, from wide distribution within the community. I can go back almost 15 years when this document was abused by the city council and not to something that most people were aware of in the community. And I think it might be something to consider to make sure when it comes, because typically this is going to be required on any development project that typically is done by the village within the walls. And it could be something that has to do with one of our recreational facilities.
You're talking about the 5, Building 5?
Pardon?
Building 5 that, Building 5 that, is that the building you're talking about in the village that,
No, I'm just talking about within the walls, because any kind of construction project, new construction project or
Yeah.
things like this often comes to the city then for a negative declaration.
okay?
And at that point, sometimes, at least I've experienced, where there were things in a negative declaration that required the village to give up certain aspects in order to, that cost the village money, but it was something that the city council required to be done in order to get approval of the negative declaration. This gives you a tremendous amount of power. And I think that having the best communication you can have, particularly with the boards or the leadership of the village, that they're well aware of what is in the negative declaration, particularly if it's any project of which they are sponsoring and taking. And I was just surprised when Chris basically, I didn't even realize that it required to be in the village library, where at least it would be available for some people to read. Okay, and I'm just, I don't want to necessarily bring up the history, but I get a little concerned when it comes something that's as critical as this, to make sure that the communication is absolutely directed to the leadership of the village, so they're well aware of, if they have the NIR there, that they have reviewed it and they understand what's in it.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Chris, do you have a comment on that at this time?
I guess my comment would just be, again, I don't have any problem with providing a copy of an EIR to the village library, but it puts us in a sticky situation of, if our guidelines say that we have to do that and make it available there, if they choose not to make it available for some reason, we don't have either state law saying that they have to make it available or the ability to directly control it. I would say that, to Catherine's point though, because her and I are on the same page, I think, of the concerns with how things have been handled in the past. These proposed CEQA guidelines, the 1,000-foot notice mailing is in addition to what's required by state law. This does provide for some substitution by newspaper for larger mailings, but it still requires, and I was remiss maybe in mentioning this earlier, but it's in the agenda report, it still requires notifying all of the homeowners associations within 1,000 feet of a project. And so if the concern is that the boards might not be aware of it, there is already a notification to homeowners association boards built into these guidelines. That's new. That is, I think, in recognition of the important role that those mutuals play. But I don't necessarily agree that whether we have it or not in the village library, that's really a material difference in public availability.
Hang tight. Carol, you had your hand up.
I didn't, but I did have a comment. You want to start with
No, that's okay.
Well, I saw your hand first, but anyway, then if you want to defer, go ahead. Annie, did you have a comment you want to make?
No.
I'll flip a coin, and whoever wants to speak, speak. All right, Carol, baby, go.
I think it's always good to, it's good to bring those kinds of things up, but I think that.
Oh, sorry.
Not on, okay, sorry. That, first off, what you're doing today is Chris did not come up with his own ideas. Why don't you explain again, just to make sure that the audience understands we're complying with state laws. The noticing is another part of it, but would you mind
Yeah, so-
reaffirming that, just so people understand what
Right.
we're doing?
So there are some discretionary pieces here, like that 1,000-foot noticing that's of the city's own creation. most of the changes that we're talking about today are strictly to update our regulation or update our guidelines from 2019 era to 2024
Right.
era. There's been a significant change in state law over that period of time. So this is an update that I think rightfully we prioritized in the work planning and budget process to bring us current.
Right, and I think that there's a problem, we know that with even noticing a meeting, that we have to have a meeting. We have to, once the rules are in place, you have to notice it that way. You can't change the hours or the time, the amount of time in a notice has to be up, and even the places where they're expected to be. Same thing with things we publish in the paper. We already following rules. So I think that to make certain we comply, we don't want it too complicated, and then say, oh, well, what you failed because you forgot to put one over here. As long as we're fully recognizing that we're informing, and you're already saying that, then I think that I would have to support what you're doing. I understand bringing those up. It's a good idea to understand where we're going, but I do support where you're going with it, that we're complying with state law. We're making it efficient without curtailing providing information, because that's the key thing here, right? Thank you.
Cynthia, do you have thoughts?
I think I'm just adding emphasis to what's been said. We are, as ever, revising our documents to comply with the requirements of state law. Second, our new requirements have more expansive notice procedures. As Chris has said, notice to the HOA boards, and as the law provides, notice to the property owners, which includes, at a minimum, GRF and VMS. And the third thing is, I would like to think that the city and the village operate in good faith towards each other. And nonetheless, I recognize that it's important to have good procedures in place to make sure that we have full and open communication, and I think this accomplishes that.
Sherry?
Nothing to add to that.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Staffing-wise, there's a project manager, and there is a, what's the first one? The
Planning director.
planning director. You're the planning director, I assume. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. How staffing-wise will this come into play sufficient that you're going to be covered from employee standpoints, that we would have somebody that can serve as a project manager under you?
Yeah, so sometimes the planning director and project manager are one and the same,
Are
but
they?
typically what would happen is we would have a full-time development manager. That position's vacant right now. So if we had a project that implicated a negative declaration, mitigated negative declaration, or environmental impact report, we would very likely have a consultant filling the project manager role until we fill the in-house role.
All right. I want you to walk me through what happens if our housing element with the state comes to pass and somebody wants to build a building here that doesn't require an EIR, as I understand it. Is that a fair statement?
If it's a by right housing development, which isn't just any housing development, but if it qualifies as a by right housing development for the city, then correct, it wouldn't be subject to the preparation of an environmental
We can
impact
give the
report.
village whatever notice we want to give them or feel we'd like them to have, and it isn't going to do any good if the building is proposed and built in the areas we have designated as housing elements, and we've done all the amendments to create the builder's right to go in and put up a.
Yeah, I mean, the state has created a world in which some housing development projects are exempt from CEQA.
Yeah.
And
that's
so,
what
yes, there are, theoretically, there are housing developments that could be proposed in the future
That the
that,
village will have no say-so in at all.
and likewise, the city doesn't have the ability to stop them on the grounds of
That's right.
environmental
I
impacts.
mean, we're out of it. We issue the procedures and It doesn't matter what notice, okay? Does any of the buildings that the village proposes, I'm thinking of this club, building 5 that's under great, what?
E, building E.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else that,
Can I make a comment while you're looking there?
the what?
May I make a comment?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I think everything you brought up is very pertinent, and I appreciate that you're pointing that out, but that isn't really affected by what we're doing today. Actually, what he's saying was in place, this doesn't change that.
Yeah, I mean, we're already required to
Yeah.
comply with CEQA, so we're.
Just so people,
Yeah.
I understand
you knew
that.
that, but I've just wondered, people at home might think, oh, that, look what's happening here. No, nothing changed. This is not connected with that. You are totally correct still, as, again, that, about what you're talking about. It is a concern, and that's another concern for another meeting,
No, I
but not this
understand
one. Okay.
My point is, there's nothing we can do about it. I mean, we have to adopt
But this doesn't change,
Yeah.
okay, I see what you're saying.
All
Okay.
right. I noticed, I went through and took a look at the table of contents for each of the existing and the new one. And that climate change you've explained well, and that was the big deletion here. The other deletions, as I see them, were not materially impactive on whether we pass this or not. Those are the only other major changes, changes, aren't they? Are the ones that you've eliminated here? Because you made no designation of, in the new draft, of what's new.
Yeah, it's all, global climate change is the only section that has been wholesale removed. But again, that's because there's state guidance to the contrary.
There's
The
something
rest
that
of them
covers
have been, in some cases, revised, again, to comply with state law. Or I would interpret the changes that we've proposed for public noticing to actually expand public noticing. So we've made those kinds of changes. But no, there isn't anything that,
Material changes on what we can do and what we can't do. Okay. Are we ready to vote on that?
I move the resolution.
I second.
Second, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, Chris. All right, let us move on now to, I believe it's the last item, isn't it?
No, it's 9.2.
9.2.
This
the
year's
fiscal year
audit committee.
There's no report. Will we have a report on that at the next meeting? We will, I suppose.
the audit committee, we're looking to appoint 2 members of the
Of a
council.
committee, all right.
Yes, so the audit committee, just as a refresher, this ad hoc audit committee would begin meeting, or would take effect immediately. We would anticipate an initial meeting next month in May, towards the end of the month. And then that would be an initial meeting with the auditors at the conclusion of their field work, the interim field work. And then there would be a second meeting with the auditors sometime in September when they're complete with their the second round of work. We would look for the council to appoint 2 members to that ad hoc committee beginning immediately through October 16th to work with the independent auditors on matters related to the fiscal year 2023-24 audit. That's the audit for the fiscal year that is currently underway and will be ending on June 30th. It can be any 2 members of the council. There's no requirement one way or the other, but just 2 members of the council to provide that interface with auditors.
Last year, who was on the committee for last year? Can I see by a show of
I
hands?
thought you weren't just,
Was I?
You,
oh,
Annie?
you were.
Okay.
And were you on it? No?
I don't know. I don't remember being on.
I
We
was
were on the
not.
selection committee. I wasn't on the audit committee.
Oh, go,
I
yeah,
don't, who?
you're on.
Yeah, you-
That was the, okay. So you're talking about a different committee, right?
This is for regular ongoing work. Yeah,
Right,
this
okay.
year there was a second ad hoc committee to assist staff with selecting or making a recommendation for new auditors.
Yes.
That was Councilmember McCary and
All
Councilmember
right, so this is
Connors.
the audit committee on the work with that group that you selected.
Correct.
Anybody interested or able to serve on that?
I wouldn't mind.
Would you do that?
Absolutely.
Thank you,
I'll do
Annie.
it too.
Any- who-
I can do it, or
Carol,
she
would
can
you
do
like
it.
to do
Either
that?
way, either
All
way.
right, fine. we'll appoint Carol and Annie McCary as members of that audit committee. I move the appointments. All right, is there a
Second.
second? Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, and we'll follow up with some scheduling for that initial meeting.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay. City Hall building signage?
No. Mayor,
All right,
Mayor?
yes.
I'd like to move that we table that for now, for a future meeting, the City Hall building signage.
Right.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Is there a second?
Is there any urgency
Okay.
or objection to
No.
that?
It's been seconded. Thank you.
I do have a question. If we put in the signage, I assume that would be in connection with the refurbishment of our city hall. So we have any deadlines on that?
Because it's building signage, it's fairly easy to make modifications, so I wouldn't, no, I don't think there's anything as long as you got back to it within the next month or two, I think you're okay. I do just want to note for the record that we did receive several public comments on this item. They've been provided to the city council, made a part of the record for the meeting, and we will keep those on file for when this returns to the
Okay.
council for consideration.
Good.
You need to vote.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Yes, I know that we need to vote. All in favor of that motion?
You had a motion and a second.
Yeah, motion to table in a second.
We've had that motion, as I recall. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank
Okay.
you. That's a beautiful picture that we have there. All right, we now come to council reports.
Just adjournment today,
We're not going to have any reports on anything, so we
because it's a special meeting.
Yeah.
Right, we will now adjourn this meeting. The next regular meeting of the Laguna Woods City Council will be Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, at 2 p.m. here in City Hall. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Much.
Thank you.
Well done.